All right, today we're diving into something really interesting. We're looking at Glendale, Georgia, where one community is fighting to get its unique history, officially on the map. So let's start with this question. What really gives a neighborhood its character? It's a great question, right? Because it's so much more than just the houses and the streets. We're talking about the stories, the people, all those shared experiences. It's that unique vibe, that sense of place you just can't find anywhere else. You could almost call it the soul of a community. And that's exactly what a group of residents in Glendale is trying to answer right now. They've formed something called the Glendale Historic Preservation and Wetlands Mitigation Committee. Led by folks like Dan Scott, they are working to prove their neighborhood is way more than just a collection of homes. They believe it's a place with true historical significance. So, what makes a landmark? Let's get into the official definition of historic. See, this isn't just about feelings or some fuzzy nostalgia. This committee has to build a formal case, and it's all based on official state criteria. They can't just say it's historic, they've got to prove it. Okay, so here's the official definition from the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. A historic district is basically a concentration of historic buildings and sites all together in their historical setting. And here's the first big hurdle. Generally, a majority of the properties have to be at least 50 years old. Now, Glendale? Yeah, they check that box. But that's really just the beginning of the whole process. All right, let's look at the case for Glendale. How are they presenting the evidence for its historical significance? Well, the committee has been digging deep into the neighborhood's past, and they think they found some really compelling stuff. Evidence they believe meets those super strict national criteria for what makes a place truly historic. And get this, they're not just arguing that Glendale meets one of the required areas of significance. They believe it meets an incredible 3 out of the 4. That is a really ambitious claim for sure. So, here are those areas of significance we're talking about. To get on the National Register, a place has to have at least one of these: a link to historic events, a connection to important people, a really distinctive design, or the potential to provide important information, like from an archaeological dig. Glendale's case, they're focusing on those first 3. This is so cool. To prove that link to an important person, the committee points to the 1970 Augusta riots. Tensions were super high, and the one and only James Brown went on the radio to plead for peace. But here's the thing, that legendary broadcast, it didn't come from some fancy studio. It came from the announcer, Marion Mallier Powell Cook, Cornell Drive in Glendale. I mean, wow. A powerful moment in history happening in the neighborhood. Okay, so for their second point, distinctive design, the evidence is literally in the street signs. Check it out. Wharton Drive, Princeton Lane, Cornell Drive, the entire subdivision is themed around universities and colleges. And this wasn't an accident, right? It was a totally deliberate choice that gives the whole area this really cohesive and unique character you just don't see everywhere. So now we get to the call for support, because presenting all this historical evidence is one thing, but to even start the official nomination process, the committee has to prove something completely different: that the community itself is actually behind them. And that brings us to the magic number 50%. To officially kick off the nomination, they need to show they have support from at least half of the neighborhood's residents or property owners. So this is where the community really has to step up and become part of the story. Now, the way they do this is very specific. The committee delivers a notice to every single address. Then residents get a 7-day window to respond. But here's the crucial part, the detail that makes all the difference. If you don't respond, you're automatically recorded as being not opposed, and that actually counts as support for the nomination. Okay, so what happens next? Let's say they get the 50% support they need and the nomination goes through. What does this all mean for Glendale's future? What are the actual benefits of becoming an official historic district? Because, it's about a lot more than just getting a fancy plaque on a sign. Well, the committee is pointing to some real potential economic benefits. They're making sure residents know there are real world advantages here. The notice they sent out actually encourages people to look up the economic benefits of historic preservation in Georgia. And that hints at some pretty great stuff. Things like access to tax incentives, grants, and other resources that could help preserve and even improve the community for years to come. So that brings us to our final question. How is history being written on your street? The whole story of Glendale is just a fantastic reminder that history isn't something you just read about in a textbook. It's literally all around us. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What kind of unique stories or important people or cool designs are hidden right on your own street, just waiting for someone to rediscover them?